The outlook for week one becomes a little clearer, and Anthony Weaver gives some insight into the secondary. We're getting into all that and more here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Today on the show, the Colts picked a quarterback for week one that the Dolphins will face. Got some thoughts. We also have a training camp battle that was called a week early, thanks to some transactions the Dolphins just finalized at 4 o'clock. It's 4:05. And Anthony Weaver, among the coordinators and coaches who spoke to the media today, with some insight into the Dolphins secondary, which is where I want to start. There's two specific storylines with what Anthony Weaver had to say about the secondary. And Mike McDaniel was asked about the secondary on Monday, and he gave a very football technical answer about what they're asking these guys to do and the way that they're seeing him execute it, but also leaving the door to say, if and when the opportunity comes to find players who will do it better, it's our obligation to bring those players in for the betterment of the team, right? It was Coach Weave showed the personality a little bit here with this first answer, but he was asked about how he sleeps at night. How do you sleep well at night knowing what you know about the cornerbacks, right? Which is kind of the same root of the question that Mike McDaniel was asked. It's like, why are you comfortable with the group even with the lack of accolades that they have? Here's what Anthony Weaver had to say. And then we're going to get into one player in particular who had an emergence against Detroit in a new role. And Anthony Weaver talked about that too. I sleep well every night. First off, you should see my wife. She's gorgeous. Props, Coach Weave. It's always smart to give a little love on the podium, right? So that help me sleep easy. We don't play baseball and basketball. We play an 11-man sport. We have the utmost confidence in those guys to go out there and do their jobs because we see it repeatedly through daily action. But they also have to understand they're not alone. We have guys up front who are going to do work and create problems for quarterbacks. That's going to make it hard for those balls to get to receivers. I have the utmost faith in those guys just in how they work and how they compete. I think we've seen that throughout the game so far. And even in joint practices when they've been faced against tougher competition, maybe not in a one-on-one drill, God bless. Like, who can win that drill if the quarterback is sitting there forever? But when we're in 11-on-11 football, those guys have shown up and done what we've needed them to do. We expect that in the regular season too. To some degree, you understand the psychology, right? And to a certain degree, yes, I do think that this can work for the Dolphins. And you've heard Mike McDaniel talked a lot about the execution of collisioning and pressing and disrupting timing within the first 5 yards, and that being something that from a pressure-oriented scheme and this team going out and getting Matthew Judon, if you're going to disrupt the timing like that, and then the synchronization of the throws with the placement, it can work in a lot of cases. But I do question if the group that they have has enough diversity, because how are you going to answer the call when you have a quarterback that processes at a high level and gets the ball out? Well, then you need guys that play a little bit more sticky. Well, then you need to be able to play some more man down the field, right? And that's for Miami. And a lot of this is it's switch releases, and it's what you saw on the touchdown pass in the preseason with the miscommunication between Storm Duck and Adrian Colbert, which Anthony Weaver was talked about, and he kind of fell on the sword with that call with Colbert and with Storm Duck. But he said we were in zero double rat, which means they're in cover 0, and 2 players kind of in the hole on either side that are kind of QB spy. They're looking for anything coming across the middle, a red zone call, right? We were trying to bring pressure. It was a poor pressure design by me that didn't hit on time. Put the corner and safety in particular, I think it was Jordan Culbert, in a very difficult situation. It was a banjo beater, so hats off to them. The quarterback found it and made the play. The pressure didn't get there. The ability to pass that off was not, well, as Weaver said, it's a banjo beater where if you're going to try to pass it off, you have somebody that's going to be trying to close from a lot of space. And, instinctually, that all has to be tied together consistently every single play, or else you're going to risk being leaky on the back end. And that's where I think the question is not, hey, are these guys physically capable? Because if you're at the NFL stage, you're a good enough athlete to make it work. It's how much football have you seen to understand when somebody comes up with a plan to try to beat what you're doing, to have the counter on call and have it be muscle memory. And that's where, if the Dolphins were going to go shopping for somebody with a little bit more experience, that's where I would have my concern, and what I would want would be somebody who is more experienced, because you don't have, the thing you don't have is experience. And I don't need the pacifier of a name that's proven, but having more talent that's proven at the NFL level and has seen more at the NFL level. So you're not seeing some of these concepts and rubs and banjo beaters and whatever else, switch releases, or however you get to these communication breakdowns, to protect yourself from them, and seeing them for the first time and having to endure the growing pains and that coming at the expense of points on the board and a lot of yards, is the question that I have. Now, Anthony Weaver also asked about Jason Marshall. And Marshall played in the slot against Detroit. And I did a video, or I'm in the process, I should say, of finishing a video for Jason Marshall and his reps against Detroit for Touchdown Miami, where we're actually looking at the film. It was really good. And Weaver was asked about him, talking about a bigger body corner. You would look at him sometimes and think, man, this guy could be a linebacker, but he has the movement skills of a DB. I think Jason's skill set gives you an opportunity to not only play him outside, but inside as well, with his physicality. We weren't really sure about until we put him in the game and we saw him make that tackle for loss on the nickel pressure. And I was like, okay, it's in there. Now let's see if he continues to grow from there. Sounds like they're going to continue to give Jason Marshall opportunities to seize that role. And the Dolphins have a proven veteran player in Mike Hilton in that regard. And that's what Anthony Weaver was asked about Mike Hilton. He said, I think we know what Mike is. Mike has played a lot of snaps. I think there's some younger guys who wanted to see out there, make sure we saw at certain positions. And that, by extension, is a large part Jason Marshall. But between Mike Hilton and now potentially Jason Marshall, I know that doesn't answer the looming question about who the other base corner is. But Marshall didn't really have those opportunities at a frequent level in college, but man, did they look like they had somebody who could really be an asset for you in that regard, with how he defeated blocks and played the D gap. Looked really good, Jason Marshall. So that's kind of the next chapter of his individual development that I'm going to be watching very closely, Jason Marshall. And we'll see what kind of opportunities they give him in that regard. And he'll probably get a pretty decent size run in the final preseason game against Jacksonville on Saturday. So we have that to look forward to. Now, one of the training camp battles is officially done. The Dolphins released someone this afternoon that was competing for a starting spot. We're going to get into that next here, Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. August 26th is officially FanDuel's Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your shot for MVP, eyeing a long shot for a division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week one even kicks off, now is your moment. You can visit FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because FanDuel's Futures Day is 1 day and 1 day only. Right now over at FanDuel, the current odds have the Bills, Ravens, and Eagles tied for the best Super Bowl odds at plus 700. And in the AFC, the Dolphins still sitting at plus 700 to win the East. So if any of that is speaking your language, you can find it over at FanDuel. FanDuel Futures Day, August 26th. Play your game. Ryan Stonehouse released today, along with Tariq Black, wide receiver, who was a part of the Larry Borum slander fest that happened against Detroit, where Tariq Black, not up on the line of scrimmage, led to a illegal formation call where Larry Borum's number was called out, but the receiver was not on the line of scrimmage. Dolphins, and they announced this at 4 o'clock this afternoon, waived Tariq Black, Ryan Stonehouse, signed Matthew Judon, and cornerback Cameron Dantzler. There's a whole rumor mill going on that I'm not going to touch about another cornerback potentially signing in Miami, where there's some rumors that there was a visit, but then there's those connected on the local beat saying that he didn't visit. So I guess just keep your eyes peeled for any further developments with corners. But Cam Dantzler, Matthew Judon sign. Stonehouse failing to beat out Jake Bailey. And the thing that Jake Bailey always had in his back pocket was the holding with Jason Sanders, where Jason Sanders was really shaky there for a while, and then the chemistry with Jake Bailey was established as the holder, and Jason Sanders looks like Jason Sanders again. But then in the preseason, Jake Bailey outperformed Ryan Stonehouse. Ryan Stonehouse had a couple of frustrating punts where Bailey was booming the ball, really. So, you had Stonehouse coming in and potentially having the leg up, pun intended, for how he was capable of just really driving the ball. But Craig Aukerman, the team's special teams coordinator, kind of alluded to a multi-pronged reasoning for why Jake Bailey wins this job. And he alluded to field punts, where you got to drive it down the length of the field, plus the 50 punts, which is if you're on the plus side of the 50 punting and trying to pin opponents deep. The preseason games. Here's what Craig Aukerman had to say on Tuesday in its entirety. Jake Bailey ended up winning it. Hats off to both those guys. They did a really good job. Competitive every single day. Again, really proud of them. I know Ryan is going to be punting somewhere in the National Football League. We just felt going forward that Jake would be our guy. Really happy with the consistency that he's been throughout camp, whether that's field punts plus the 50, the preseason games. Super proud to work with him and excited for him too. I know he's going to have a great year. This roster spot now being open it kind of sets your special teams nucleus in place. It's going to be Joe Cardona. It's going to be it's going to be Jake Bailey, and it's going to be Jason Sanders. Craig Aukerman's unit through 2 games has looked much more lively than what Danny Crossman's 2019 to 2024 Miami Dolphins special teams units have looked like. So I think that change has been a healthy one, but the Dolphins ultimately opting to not shake up this piece because it's not just the punter, right? Like I think it would have been different. It would be easier to change things up if it didn't impact the kicking game in every phase. But the fact that Bailey, for a small sample size, but in the games, outperformed Stonehouse, has the chemistry with Jason Sanders in his back pocket. This is a decision that they chose to make. And I get it, and that it's one of those things where I think you're going to have to live with the pros and the cons. And Jake is just going to have a frustrating punt every now and again. And here's hoping you don't have to punt as often this year as you did last year, 2024. And if that's the case, and then you're getting to the 40-yard line and you're getting points with consistency because Sanders is driving the you-know-what out of the ball, then we can live with this decision, and hopefully the kick coverage is better. I think what's been really notable for me for watching the 2 preseason games is the Dolphins work on the perimeter on special teams and guys getting off of blocks and getting down the field. It's looked a lot different than what it looked like, in my opinion, in 2024 and in 2023. And you can keep going back with Danny Crossman. So I think the coverage of all of your kicks can kind of help you offset some of the potential variance. And I know Craig Aukerman talked about consistency as part of the reason for the decision that they ultimately made. But I think you have enough of a body of work with Jake Bailey to know you're going to get a frustrating 28-yard punt probably every other week. Or at least we have been. I think there's a lot bigger things that are going to define the successes and failures of the team for 2025. And if this is the decision that they ultimately choose to make, then I'll be thankful to have not 2 rosters spots committed to punters to be able to open the door for somebody else, whether that's Cam Dantzler, who the team signed, or somebody else to come in and try to shake things up and make an impact and earn a 53 spot. Or potentially they get another veteran like what Matthew Judon. Matthew Judon obviously didn't earn a 53 spot with air quotes, but he's going to be on the 53. Needless to say, he got a 1-year, $3 million contract with incentives up to 6. Pretty hefty amount of incentive money on the line for Matthew Judon to come in and make some plays. I would tell you what that contract means and what cutting Ryan Stonehouse means for the Dolphins in their salary cap situation. But I'm going to make sure I speak directly into the mic here in case anybody who runs Spot Track or Over the Cap is hard of hearing. I need you to update the Zach Sealer contract. It's been 2.5 weeks, and I have got nothing for an updated salary cap figure for Zach Sealer, at least as of 3 hours ago when I last checked. Hopefully this is the patented Locked On Dolphins jinx, and me saying it here is finally going to allow something to come through so I can get some updated numbers for salary cap projection. And we can figure out what Matthew Judon signing, what it leaves the Dolphins with from salary cap space. But it all just has, hey, Zach Sealer signed a new 3-year contract and no updated numbers. I'm about to pull. The hair had a comeback of the century. I used to have no hair, and then I had long hair, and now I'm about to have no hair again because I'm about to pull it all out, waiting for Zach Sealer's contract to get put in the Spot Track and over the cap. So please, humor me. Spot Track, over the cap, put it in. We're going to get into the Colts quarterback decision next here, Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. You ever decide last minute to head to the ball game with your friends or family? Maybe it's game day. You realize you want to be in the stands, see the game for yourself. It's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without all of the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even a bigger group to go with you to the game. Game Time makes it all possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. They've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and the lowest price guarantee that takes all of the worrying out of buying. Game Time, I love their all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees when you put the tickets into your cart. I love the panoramic views so you can see the sight lines. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets with lowest prices, guaranteed. Daniel Jones will be the Colts starting quarterback for week 1 against the Miami Dolphins. Anthony Richardson, team's former top 10 draft choice at quarterback, benched in favor of Danny Dimes. There's 2 ways this decision goes for Miami. Shane Steichen, the Colts head coach, alluded to the consistency in the pre-snap and the operation of the offense, and that's what they're leaning on for Daniel Jones. So from that perspective, it puts more of it back into the coach's hands to try to coach their way through a game. That way, this becomes a more difficult and challenging matchup for the Dolphins. But the other side of this coin is Anthony Richardson has such a margin for even if things go wrong, he's so physically talented that they could still go right. And it's more chaotic that way. Outside of structure plays are less predictable that way. And you've got a guy who is 250 pounds, who runs fast, who can access the entirety of the field, who's hard to tackle. It's a combination that, like, it presents problems. And that's how a guy like Anthony Richardson, with as unexperienced as he was, gets drafted as early as he did. Now, when you draft a guy that's as unexperienced as that as early as the Colts did, you have to have a plan and you have to have patience. And the team really hasn't had any of either, unfortunately. And that's bad news for Anthony Richardson in his tenure with the Colts. But for the Dolphins, I think the operation of the Colts offense becomes more consistent, but the ceiling of the execution of what happens and the dangerous element of outside of structure is reduced. So I think this plays well for Miami outside of, hey, maybe there's less self-inflicted wounds offensively for the Colts because Jones is more consistent with the operation of the offense. But I think it's a greatly neutered attack for what Daniel Jones, the passer, and what Daniel Jones, the runner, and what Daniel Jones, the athlete, presents versus Anthony Richardson. Now, Richardson could just as easily come out and lay a total egg and go 8 of 25 passing, and maybe Daniel Jones in the same situation goes 13 of 25 passing. So Richardson's the variance player. Jones is a low ceiling player. And I don't know. I think if the Dolphins end up dropping a game to a Daniel Jones-led Colts team in his first game as the starter, and they have problems defensively, I think it would be very ominous for what this season is going to look like. I'm not going to sit here and go on the record and do a game prediction on August 19th. But it will be very telling because the Colts have some talent at wide receiver. Now, I mean, Alec Pierce is a big body down the field guy. Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Adonai Mitchell. They have a rookie in Tyler Warren at tight end. They've got some weapons for sure. And it's on you from a coverage perspective to have a certain baseline because I feel like Daniel Jones is the kind of quarterback that I think you can get after. I mean, you're going to have a new center and a new starter at guard, at right guard. I think you can test Braden Smith with speed. You've got power rushers. You've got speed rushers. You should have what you need to be able to throw enough at the Colts here to really challenge Daniel Jones. That's going to be very telling how this game plays out because now it's less of, hey, maybe Anthony Richardson just had a couple of incredible plays that there's not a lot of guys that are physically capable of making. And maybe that's what beats you if you were to lose to Anthony Richardson. And now it is, hey, you've got a Honda Civic at quarterback. No disrespect to Daniel Jones, but I think we all know what he is. There's not a lot of horsepower there, right? So glad that we have this clarity almost a month out to kind of get a feel. And I'm sure Anthony Richardson is going to have a package of plays, right? You're going to get in the red zone and Richardson with the quarterback run game and what that can be as a force multiplier and how that changes the numbers and the math of how you defend him and the fact that he can pass. I would expect you'll see an Anthony Richardson package. So we will see some of Anthony Richardson, but it will be the Daniel Jones show when the Dolphins visit the Colts in week 1. We know that now. That is going to do it for us here today on the show. I'm Kyle Krabs. You can keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. I am out of here. Go Fins. I'll talk to you all again tomorrow.